Hi, everybody. Great to see you. Thanks for tuning in. It's our weekly program every Thursday evening where I interview innovative thinkers and creative firebrands. And we are living through a critical time in American history with the COVID-19 pandemic and a vital social justice movement led by Black Lives Matter. Our guests are a variety of artists and leaders discussing new ideas, how they're coping with the coronavirus and making positive social change, as well as showing us glimmers of hope for the future. And my wonderful guests this week are Pluess, who's a sound designer. Most recently, you would have seen his work at Arena Stage in Right to be Forgotten, and Megan Sandberg-Zakian, a freelance theater director with a focus on new plays. We'll start with Pluess. He's a composer, he's a sound designer based in Chicago. His credits include composition and sound design for numerous productions for Looking Glass, Court Theater, Goodman Theater, Steppenwolf Theater Company, Northlight Theater, Victory Gardens Theater, About Face Theater, many other Chicago and regional theaters, and Broadway credits include Metamorphosis, I Am My Own Wife, 33 Variations, and The Clean House. He's received multiple Jeff Awards, an LA Ovation Award, Barrymore Award, Drama Critics Award, and Drama Desk Lortel nominations for composition and sound design. It's so great to see you, Andre.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me, Molly.
And you look like a classic sound designer with your earphones on and...
Thanks. Yeah, I thought I'd rock the headphones.
I love it. I love it. So I'm curious, as a sound designer, how much time do you spend in front of screens or with your earphones on a daily basis?
Wow. I've never thought about quantifying it before, but I would say easily in peak season, easily 50% of the day, especially sitting in tech, our breaks, the headphones don't come off. We keep plugging away. Yeah, a lot. That's crazy.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
And when you have the headphones on, are there moments when you're not needed in the production where you switch over into something else, or are you always focused? How do you keep your focus? Because that's a long time to be on screen or to be listening.
It's funny. It's not like there's constantly audio passing through the headphones, even though they're on. Do you know what I mean? A lot of the work editing or rendering files or the headphones, they're just. I find them kind of cozy. I made sure I got ones a while ago that had nice kind of soft, cushy, ear baffling, and they're like. Especially sometimes theaters can be chilly. I find them just like earmuffs. I don't know. That's how I think of them. And they block out, strident sounds that I might not necessarily want to hear. I don't know.
Andre, theaters are always chilly. We keep them cold, so when audiences come in, they warm them up. But every time we're in tech or anything else, we are frozen. I'm always in like 3 layers of clothes.
It's not just me, right? It's just a thing, right? Theaters, wherever you go, they're cold. Yeah.
It's a thing. And usually there's some kind of a breeze going over your head, which is why sometimes I have to have a hat on as well. I don't think this is something that an audience might appreciate, because usually what happens with audiences is, oh, I'm so hot. Why don't they turn the heat down?
Yeah. And, outdoor theater, which I do a lot of, theater, outside in the summertime, it gets cold, on the West Coast, those theaters get cold at night when the fog starts to roll in from, and I'm so happy to have my headphones on, keeping my ears warm then. So they're practical on multiple levels.
So I'm curious, are you seeing a lot of outdoor theater picking up now during pandemic days that people are saying, oh, we're going to reopen this summer on the West Coast, or you're in the Chicago area? What are you hearing from people? What are they interested in?
I definitely am feeling, and the vibe is that those theaters that can have larger numbers outside with in the open air with air circulation, those are the types of theaters I think that are going to come back to normalcy, whatever that really ends up meaning, but to return to normalcy a little bit sooner, because I think obviously the obvious reasons that the logistics are easier, crowd control. Those theaters tend to be in more out of the way places. I think it's for sure a trend. I'll say even during the pandemic, some of the first projects I worked on were sort of at those places like that were site specific. Installations or walking tours on their grounds, where they could kind of take crowds through kind of controlled outdoor theatrical experiences. I wouldn't necessarily call them plays, but they were definitely theatrical performances, for sure.
Right. Are you seeing people do more installations than you've seen before? Places where people can walk through and experience something as opposed to sit down and park?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm necessarily seeing that out at large, but I've been called on to work on productions like that as a sound designer. I think that's been an opportunity for theater artists to kind of get together and make things in a safe way, in a way that being inside a traditional venue doesn't necessarily allow. So I think that's for just logistical reasons and technical reasons, it's been something that's been kind of fun to do. I don't know that they're necessarily the most financially sound models of production, but where I've been having a great time working on sort of smaller site-specific narrative pieces that range anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour and a half. It's been really fun, actually. I hope that kind of thing sticks around, frankly.
Yeah.
Once theaters reopen normally, like, for example, like your beautiful venue at Arena, I could imagine, here's my pitch, that incredible, I don't call it a lobby, sounds so diminutive, but that incredible space that's multi-leveled and expansive, could be a great place for that kind of performance. Pitch complete.
No, I would agree, Andre. I would agree. I'm so curious about people getting back into the theaters, or even what you've seen during pandemic days. What's the emotional time that's spent with artists coming back in during the pandemic or at the end of the pandemic? How are you feeling people are responding to the moment?
I mean, without question, there's, and I'm feeling this most recently, a sense of there's just it's a question mark. I think there's enthusiasm and there's a thirst to get things, to get producing again in a traditional sense inside a theater of people sitting close to each other. Full houses, actors on stage, band, orchestra playing, whatever it is. But I think there's real uncertainty right now as to at what point the general population is going to be ready to kind of embrace that kind of proximity. So we're all eager, we're excited, but we're all wondering how and on what timeline it's all going to really kind of coalesce to feel like, wow, it's things are the way they were, at least in terms of the ability to produce.
Yeah.
It's hard. I know a lot of people that have really been. It's so hard to talk about this because I don't ever want to sound like I'm framing the pandemic as a positive thing, because of course it's been the most horrible thing ever to happen, in our lifetimes in a lot of ways. But the way I think about it is the pandemic, I can't end soon enough, obviously, right? But the perks of quarantine, for lack of a better word, for lack of a better phrase, are real, and I know a lot of friends that were all kind of coming to terms with this idea that, especially people like me who've had to, who just by the nature of what we do, travel, 50 to 60 or 70% of the year, to go to theaters where we're working on plays. Having had that kind of removed from our lives and the kind of looming sense of that coming back is a double-edged sword. We're excited to work again, to get out with people and be out in the, in the field, making plays and collaborating in person, face to face. But it's been I have a 5-year-old daughter. It's hard for me to think of. I've been home for a year, straight shot a year around my wife and daughter. That part has been spectacular, and I'm just personally coming to terms with what it means now that I'm feeling the kind of engine revving up again, of live production coming back. How to maybe try to balance those two things in a more effective way.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of anxiety, I think, is coming along with it as well. In addition to the hope and anticipation, there's anxiety.
Yep. And it also feels like, because of what we learn online, whether it's Zoom or something else, a lot of those design meetings where everybody had to fly into a place don't need to happen that way anymore.
They don't necessarily have to. It's so true.
And that's going to cut down on some of that.
Yeah.
Maybe only 10 or 15%, but it will cut down on some of the travel for sure.
Without question. I'm sure.
And readings and workshops. I'm so curious about your career, because you've had a big, juicy career, and you've worked on both established works of the canon, like Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, or the Scottish play Macbeth, as well as new shows like Equivocation or Eastland, a new musical. Is your process different for older versus new work? And if so, why or why not?
That's such an interesting question. I mean, definitely, if I know a play has a massive production history, I'm a little bit more. I do spend a little bit more time in a kind of dramaturgical state, early on in the process, because I feel like even though I'd love to say, oh, I don't want to know anything about it. I just want to go and I feel like there's value to be gained from having at least some perspective on cultural context or whatever, historical context. I do love, though, working on new plays because of the absence of I love being the first designer to attack a script, only because I just feel uninhibited and completely free to kind of dive in without a dramaturg or a director saying, "Oh, that reminds me of blah blah blah's production," or whatever, or "That's so interesting." I've never seen that. I don't know. There's less baggage with a new play, and usually when we're working on a new play, a playwright's around, and I love hanging out with playwrights. I love trying to get my ears around what a playwright might be hearing. In addition to the director, obviously, as well. I just think it's really I draw a great deal of pleasure from working on new work, without question.
Yeah. I would agree with you. I mean, sometimes it's really great to work on something that's been around a long time, because one can feel as if, ooh, we're breaking new ground here. We know the information of what's been done before. Now, what else is in here that is right for this moment in time and where we can explode it?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're working on something new, you just feel like, woo, it's uncharted territory. Let's go and see what's here. And how good is it really? We think it's a really good play, but how good is it really? And what can we find out about it? I love that. I know we only have a couple minutes left, but
and how much better can we make it? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, as opposed to, you're like, oh, this is like something that's been tried and tested. Your danger of messing it up is high. But if it's new, you're kind of like, really, you can really take it to the next level of introducing it to the world.
Yep.
Anyway,
Beautiful. And I know we only have a couple minutes left, Andre, and I'd just love to hear from you. Where are you seeing glimmers of hope in the future?
Wow. I mean, I think you a little bit touched on it, Molly, in what you were saying earlier. Not that we ever want to replace direct direct one-on-one communication in the room, right? That's something that's so vital to what theater is and how it's made. But there's something about the broadening of what the pandemic has done, and what the quarantine has done, I should say, to allow people all over the world to kind of get together without inhibition to collaborate and to make things. Since the pandemic, since the quarantine, I feel like I've worked with people I would have never gotten to see or get to know, and it makes me excited thinking about moving forward, because while we'll obviously bring back all the things we love about the in-person, I feel like we're just scratching the tip of the iceberg right now as to the new and amazing things that can be achieved with kind of this virtual hive mind, that can be conducted and coordinated in all these different ways. I think there's a lot of great things in the future. For collaborative environments,
I so agree with you.
Yeah.
And in the beginning of the pandemic, everybody would say, no, it's not theater. You can't do that. It's not theater. It's kind of like, well, theater isn't here, so we better do something. And then it became, oh, okay, this is fascinating. Oh, all right, let's try this online. Oh, okay. And it felt like everybody was explorers in their own way.
Absolutely.
And that made a huge difference in terms of creativity as far as the theater artist. So, Andre, I can't wait to get back into a theater and see your work again, or hear it online, or whatever. It's so great to have you on, and thanks so much for coming.
So great to see you, Molly. Take care.
Right. Bye. Megan Sandberg-Zakian. She's a freelance theater director focusing on the development of diverse new plays for the American stage. And she's a co-founder of Maia Directors, a consulting group for artists and organizations engaging with stories from the Middle East and beyond. She is an author. Her first book, There Must Be Happy Endings, on a Theater of Optimism and Honesty, is available from the Third Thing Press. And there she is. Megan's previously served as Associate Artistic Director of the Underground Railway Theater, the Providence Black Rep Company, and the 51st Street Project, and as Director in Residence at Merrimack Rep in Massachusetts. She's a recipient of the Princess Grace Theater Award and TCG Future Leaders Fellowship, an alumna of the Lincoln Center Directors Lab, and a proud member of SDC. Hi, Megan.
Hey, that was everything about me.
Quite a great resume. Quite a great resume. I'm going to talk to you about your book, because I know authors, it's like having a baby. You need to talk about the baby, because the baby is so important.
Yeah.
And it really is a good book. I sat down and read it in about 2 days, and I thought, she's a very good writer and a really intriguing writer. And in your book, There Must Be Happy Endings, you examine the need for hopeful theater in the midst of what at times can seem a hopeless world. Can you take a moment to share with us what you feel qualifies as hopeful theater, what its impact on modern society is, and how current theater makers can incorporate that ideology into their productions and practices? A big question, Megan, but my money's on you.
Yes, I could talk to you all night about that. Thanks so much for having me, Molly. And it's just thrills my my book parent soul to hear you talk about reading my book. If we were in person, I could pull out my phone and show you pictures of my book. I do feel that it is my child. It's sitting right here next to me.
Show it. Show it. Hold it up so people can see it.
This is my book, There Must Be Happy Endings, on a Theater of Optimism and Honesty. Yeah, so I think that the title kind of really gets to the question that you're asking. The process of writing the book taught me a lot about what a hopeful theater is, and I really came to the feeling that the most hopeful theater is the most truthful theater. That by really being willing to look at what is, being willing to encounter the world around us with all of its grief and its despair and its joy and its delight, that is what gives me hope, is that kind of fullness of breath as in, but also breadth. So that for me actually is what I'm finding hope in. You're asking Andre about that, like what is what are we hopeful about in this moment? And, your question about like, what is a hopeful theater? To me, it is one that reckons with all of the difficult things in the world, with some kind of buoyancy, so that, if we can have that conversation about, let's have a 5-day work week. Let's not have 10 out of 12s. Let's have our production meetings on Zoom so we don't have to leave our children and our wives. That wasn't as like misogynistic as it sounds. I also have a wife. That there's a kind of like, there's a hopefulness in that willingness to make space for people's humanity, and a hopefulness in the willingness to look at the harm that's been caused by some of those practices and lots of other stuff. So, and then in terms of like within the frame of the play, I find myself most drawn to work that's really not afraid to have like thorny and hard and dark and difficult conversations, and engage with ideas that feel unresolvable and hard, and that we, I always say to my students, pull yourself into the material, come as close to it as you can. And I think in that kind of closeness, in that, there's no hiding in a close encounter. Like it has to be honest when you're really close. So that maybe that sounds abstract, but that's, to me, that's what I'm thinking a lot about.
So great. Well, I'm really curious because we're in a moment where anti-Asian hatred is at the highest level in this country since World War II, when Japanese people were put into internment camps. And how in the theater can we answer that, Megan? What's our job? What's our purpose in terms of the communication with audiences?
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking that. It's so hard to have these conversations and not hold in one hand what's happening in this moment and in the world. That's something that I always really appreciate about you and about Arena, actually, that you're always doing that. So a couple of things in my, at least in how I'm wrestling with it right now. One, I think that in the vein of looking truthfully at hard things, I think that really allowing ourselves to have an analysis dramaturgically in terms of the scripts that we're producing, also in terms of the aesthetics of our work. How are we responsible for, how have we been responsible for, and how are we currently responsible for perpetuating harmful, violent images and images that incite violence? The conversation in the last couple of days in the theater community has been really rich around the images that incite violence, particularly around Asian women, are not images that you typically think of as violent images. That there's that fetishization, exotification are violent things to do to people, human beings on stage. And we're talking, of course, a lot about women in particular, Asian women in particular, with these recent horrific events. I think that the first thing we need to do is really take a hard look at how we have been complicit. I started thinking about, okay, what have I done? Like, how did I cast these roles? How did I look at Asian actors? How did I speak to them? How did I talk to costume designers about costuming Asian women? I'm thinking of a particular production where I had a fight about how much skin an Asian performer was showing. And the performer wasn't comfortable with it, and I wasn't comfortable with it, and it did reflect the drawing, but once it was in front of us, it clearly felt harmful, and it was a fight. Because the creative team felt this expresses the character, this is who they are, and sort of could, so I just actually just thought of that. So I do feel like it's each of our personal responsibility to take some inventory of what we've been up to, before we can go forward. And of course we donate and we read and all of that stuff, but really, what have we been up to? And then the second thing is, it's all intersectional. And I feel really strongly that if we keep, siloing, like if we're only going to think about Asian folks this week, and we'll think about trans folks next week because some horrible thing happens in their community, and Indigenous folks the week after that, we're continuing to do exactly what white supremacists are interested in, which is using whiteness as the norm against what all of this is measured, and talking about ending Asian hate instead of ending white supremacy. So I'm actually wearing, you can't see it intentionally on Zoom, so I feel like I could just wear a t-shirt, but I'm wearing my favorite t-shirt right now that says, the revolution will be intersectional. This is what we do on Zoom, right? We put our blazer over our t-shirt.
I love that.
But I did put it on today because I was thinking about intersectionality, and you and I were talking before the stream started about our vice president. This woman is a very intersectional human, and we have a model for this now in the White House.
Explain to our audience what you mean, because I think some people may hear the word intersectional and yet may not completely understand it. So talk about Kamala and how she is.
Yeah, so and intersectionality is a term originally coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, and I highly recommend folks check out her series Under the Black Light. She's been doing this amazing podcast, videocast series and actually one of the producers on it is Oye Tempo, who's an amazing theater director. So really recommend checking that out. So Kimberly Crenshaw coined this term, and it was originally a legal term, and I definitely am not the person to define the legal definition, the definition of it as relates to criminal justice and criminal law. But when I'm thinking about intersectionality, I'm thinking about how different identities live in us, and how the experience of identity is not a monolithic one. I mean, I personally I'm a woman, I'm a queer woman, I'm a bisexual woman, which I don't often say, but that's how I identify, as does my wife. My wife is African American. My heritage is mixed. I say I'm Middle Eastern. I'm half Armenian and half Jewish. My parents had a mixed class, mixed race marriage that was very contentious, mixed religion marriage. So there's in my house, in my home, in my family, there's so many things that make us who we are. And I really think that's true of everyone, but it's just more visible in some folks. And in Kamala, she has a number of different pieces of her identity. I am so moved by how much of my own family I see reflected in their household, both in the fact that it's an interracial marriage, that her spouse is Jewish, that she herself is a biracial woman, South Asian and Black. She seems to have the ability to sit with great fullness as a Black woman and as a South Asian woman, as an Indian woman. So it's just very moving to me and exciting, and that's where I am with intersectionality at this moment.
Well described. And I think for people that are hearing you tonight, it is going to be one of the reasons why they're going to want to pick up your book. Because if you want to learn more from Megan, do that. We only have about 1 minute left. So if you can give me 2 bursts of joy in terms of images that you're holding on to, maybe talk about a bird that you've been watching.
You're so right, Molly. That's where all of my joy is these days. Well, today the two mourning doves at our bird feeder who have been flying into each other and knocking each other off the bird feeder sat on the bird feeder next to each other and fed side by side. And it was so cute and so sweet. And it was raining and their little heads went under the little cover on the bird feeder. So their heads stayed dry and they just, they ate the peanuts and the sunflower seeds. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. It was hopeful. And it reminded me that those moments of fighting are a part of it and they coexist with the moments of sharing. And it was very joyful.
Beautiful, Megan. Thank you so much for coming on. And I love seeing you. And it was really fun to spend this time together.
Thank you so much, Molly. Thanks for doing this. I miss
Absolutely.
being there with you.
I miss you too. You take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Two really, really great guests tonight. And my guest next week will be Stephanie Stebish. She's the Margaret and Terry Stent director. She's the head of the Smithsonian American Art Museum and the Renwick Gallery. And Terry Burrell, Broadway and resident stage actor. She's been at Arena Stage in Oklahoma, Women of Brewster Place, many others. Really two great women next week. And for tonight's gift of art, it's all about our artist marketplace. There's a new piece on it. And Megan, who you just met, is on the marketplace with her book. So check it out. And thanks everybody very much for being here. And everybody take care of yourselves this week. Thanks.
I'm thrilled to offer chess lessons on the artist marketplace. Why? As an actor, I teach chess not just as a competitive game, but as a dialogue between two people, a scene that plays out with each move on the board.
One rainy fall day, I wanted to play while mist was rising from ground.
I'm thrilled to offer an original song and composition that will bring unspeakable joy for that special someone.
I would love for you to join me for Short Story Happy Hour, drinks and short stories. What more could you ask for?
I love leading groups of friends and families and more to see and wonder and write in new and creative ways.
Hey, friend! Lorene here. I'm so excited to dance it out with you today. Yes!
I wish you all love.
I'm so glad to be connecting with you all.
I'll see you over the board on Zoom.